So Wendy, I'd like to welcome you along to our webinar this morning, and thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us. And I'll give some background, Wendy, on you just for our attendees, and as I said, for the recording as well. So Dr. Wendy James is an associate professor at Australia Catholic University, and you're based at the Brisbane campus, Wendy, but with responsibility for some campuses in Sydney, as well as Melbourne as well. So Wendy, many of us know, is renowned for her commitment to student excellence, and that's a focus on very much how can she engage in students, how can she improve the learning outcomes for students. And indeed, it was recently recognised by the university, where Wendy and her team won the University Medal, and as well as that, the Vice-Chancellor's Staff Excellence Award. And on top of that, Wendy, I also believe that you won the Faculty Award for Innovation Excellence in Technology. So congratulations, that is no mean feat, and especially in the current times that we find ourselves in. Wendy, and in addition to that, is also an experienced e-learning manager, a designer and a developer for both vocational, but also undergraduate and postgraduate courses. And you've also developed a number of MOOCs in accounting as well, something I was not aware of, Wendy, until we recently spoke. Wendy is also a fellow of CPA, fully certified in management accounting, as well as a member of the International Association for Accounting Education and Research. Another great topic perhaps for us on another day. So Wendy and I recently met when Wendy reached out to me looking for a way to engage her students and these first year students, that we want to be able to service them early and make sure we know who's at risk and what content they're struggling with and so on. So therefore, Wendy introduced Quitch to her students earlier this year, and today she's here to share that story with you. So Wendy, I'm going to just say a warm welcome to our attendees as well, and I'm going to hand over to you. We'll talk probably, Wendy, for about 20 minutes, and for anyone, feel free to put some questions in the chat, but also we can have some time, 10 minutes at the end for a conversation as well. So over to you, Wendy, and thank you.
Oh, look, thanks, Gronya. Look, I hope I'm able to live up to all of that you have just described. It's been a wonderful career so far, and I thoroughly enjoy it. So what I might do is just share my screen so that you can, there we go. Right. Assuming everyone can see the screen.
Yes, we can see it, Wendy. You're good to go.
Thank you. Well, yeah, as Gronya mentioned, Associate Professor Wendy James with the Peter Faber Business School at ACU, and I, reached out to Gronya some time ago to talk about Quitch, and I did obviously end up going with it, and very happy indeed. So today I'd like to talk about the implementation of Quitch, which is an online interactive gamified quiz application to help students and to help me get students more engaged in the unit. So before I sort of start talking about my implementation, just want to give a little bit of background. So student engagement is at the forefront of business education today. It's a multi-dimensional construct, and there's been much discussion about the elements of student engagement, and it's an important challenge for educators to ensure that students are engaged as dynamic participants in the active learning process. So Duncan Nolte explains that student engagement is the most fundamentally important aspect of the whole of your education provision, because, to put it simply, it is the student that learns. So whatever you do, you simply must engage them in learning behaviour, which I thought that was very, very interesting concept as he described it. So class preparedness, it's a frequent academic goal of educators, and often students will come to class with the expectation that they'll get everything that they need during the class without reading the material. Students who've read the material before class save class time that is better devoted to more substantive discussion, and it allows the educator and students to discover where weaknesses in understanding might be. So several studies have found that students find quizzes useful for learning. The main intention here is not to prepare students so much for the final assessment, but rather to enhance their ability to be informed collaborative participants in the unit. So this would ultimately increase student learning outcomes. So there's an increasing focus on retention and success in higher education that's prompted educators to consider the integration of technology into university teaching environments. So let me talk about my unit, or the business schools unit. It's an identical unit offered at each of our 5 campuses. So we've got one in Melbourne, Brisbane, North Sydney, Strathfield and Blacktown. There's a national lecturer in charge, which is myself, and then there are campus lecturers on each campus. And I guide the lecturers as they deliver the material to their students. They all have exactly the same material. So I provide the material for them and they will present it. Obviously, they have different personalities, so they will deliver it in different ways. But fundamentally, it's exactly the same, as is the assessment and things that students do in class. So there's 12 weeks. We don't have lectures and tutorials. We have workshops. So it's more of a hands-on approach that's a combination of a lecture and a tutorial. So they are combined. So that we want students to have read the material and looked at any other introductory material before they come to class so that they're prepared. And that's a challenge. There's 3 assessments. The first one is student engagement. We introduced that in, I think, 2020 to try and get students to think about that of all the things that they need to do. So as Kaplan once said, what gets measured gets done. So this is why we started to measure their engagement in class and outside the class. It's worth 20%. There's also a written report, which is the second assessment, financial statement analysis. We all know what fun that is. And then there's the final exam, which covers most of the topics that they go through, and that's the 50%. So let me talk about the student engagement assessment, so assessment 1. So there's 3 components to that particular assessment. There's being prepared for class, so that's the readings and having a look at the LMS, watching concept videos that I have created about different topics within the week. There's in-class participation, which is, again, very subjective. And then there's a discussion forum. And the discussion forum questions, they are required to answer between 30 and 100 words. And generally the question, it's an essential question that they need to answer, and it's about ethics and sustainable development. And I use the SDGs to base those questions on. And it's assessed from weeks 2 through to the end of week 11. So there's 10 weeks. And they're assessed not on score, but rather on the number of questions that they've answered. They're still learning. So we took that approach so that the more that they did, the better informed they were. So rather than, getting it right or wrong. So after having a look at past performance, so I was having a look at the student engagement outcomes. I found the average grade for assessment 1 was about 12.5%, not very high, but nevertheless, still a passing grade. So those students who achieved greater than 13% all had final grades that were a credit or above. So it was working. Students who achieved between 8 and 10% didn't achieve greater than a pass. And those students who achieved less than 8% generally failed the unit. So overall, engagement enabled students to firstly understand the learning outcomes to a greater extent, and then that increased their results in other assessment and ultimately their final grade. So it was working. Previously, I used quizzes in the LMS, so we used Moodle, but very static. They're very static type questions. So, and it really didn't engage students. And when you think about that, there's 3 components in assessment 1, and it's over 10 weeks. And by the time you break all that down, each quiz and each component really isn't worth that much. So it's really those highly motivated students that would continue to do things each week. But you really want to get those other students who go, no, not this week. I've got too much on my plate. So it was really those that I was trying to attract more so to get them engaged in the unit. So what does this entail? So they're asked to read the chapters, as I said, mentioned earlier, watch the conceptual videos on various topics. And the motivation was to increase students' willingness to read the material, the pre-material prior to class, so that they were conceptually aware of the topic that was going to be covered. And again, enabling more in-depth discussion in class. So they had an idea of what they were going to be doing. So, but then we sort of had to think, so in-class participation, how was I going to evaluate that? We know we've got, you can say, well, how many times did they put their hand up? How many times did they talk? But we've got different personalities. Some students can just sit back and want to observe rather than actually engage in collaborative work. And then you've got those who are always putting their hand up. There's always one or two in a classroom, me. And you don't want to have to get them to be answering questions all the time. So having the in-class engagement as assessed by lecturers who are looking at, then they're going to have to spend time making notes, who did this, who did, when you really want to show students that you care, that you are involved in their learning. And so that was, I was trying to overcome that subjectivity and pulling the lecturer away by having to make notes about who was engaging and who wasn't. So, and this is where I thought, well, how can I do this better? And looking at the quiz that they had, I also used the textbook had a learning site where students go on and practice questions, but they tended to do that as they got closer to the final exam, so they weren't using it so much. So it really wasn't. It wasn't really helpful in that respect to help students engage throughout the semester and to be able to have those discussions about the material. So again, my main aim was how could I get more students to be engaged with the unit. So I started looking at mobile applications and online quizzes and the like. So mobile applications are used as learning and teaching, and they're not uncommon in higher ed. So recent studies have reported that various higher ed mobile apps, despite the differences in their design and intended uses, are united by the common goal to increase student engagement and learning outcomes. So they can be used to facilitate knowledge and student engagement, and particularly apps with gamified elements integrated into their design, in addition to providing the same as the others do, they further engage and motivate students, particularly when we think about the importance of retention. So that was one of my aims, to be able to do that. And so, of course, then along came Quitch. So after researching the various possibilities, I chose Quitch. Why? Well, for online quizzes to be effective, student feedback should be available as soon as possible after they've completed. And this is where Quitch really shines. Further, I found responses to my queries received from was really quickly, very fast turnaround. When I had a query, I had a response within a couple of hours. The reporting and stats available through Quitch, and that gave me instant information and quick visual of how my student performance and engagement was going. So that was just what I needed. So I had a finger on the pulse to be able to see how students were performing. So how I went about it? Well, I first developed a master site. It had 10 sections, so one for each week. And so I then had 2 topics within each week. One was called Quitch on the Go, and the other was Quitch Bonus. So the Quitch on the Go was multiple choice, fill in the blank, true or false. And it also allowed for hints and where you could put textbook page numbers, so a student could go to their textbook and have a look and actually search for that particular multiple choice answer that they may be looking for. So not the actual multiple choice question, but how they actually could answer the question. So that was really good. And setting it up was super easy. It's really intuitive and just very easy to be able to create the questions. And Quitch were always there. If I had a problem, as I said earlier, they were straight onto it and would answer my query. So they've also got Quitch on the Go. So Quitch in general, they have students can download the app on their phones they can use it on a tablet, they can use it on their laptop. So this is what I found very useful. So they could use it wherever they were. And that was really good. So this capture is from a mobile phone for one of the quiz questions that they had. So you could see how easy it was. It would just come up. Students would get alert, oh, your questions are available for you to answer. And so they would just go on and then answer it. So wherever they were, they might have been on the bus, the train, in bed, or, just working at home. So I wanted them to feel motivated and to have easy access. So the questions weren't hard or onerous, but rather they did encourage students to look up the textbook. And I had them set to release early in the week and close on Friday at 5 o'clock. Super easy to schedule. You can have it one a day or more a day if you like, so that they're staggered over the week. But I chose to have them all released early Monday morning. So our classes were on Monday, so it made that work quite well. They can attempt them multiple times, but for me, I made the first attempt the one that counted towards their competition points. So I'll talk more about the competition later. So the in-class participation, this is where I created the Quitch bonus questions. So when we think about, I mentioned earlier that rather than having lecturers, making note of who spoke, who asked a question in class, who was doing the work in class, I created Quitch bonus. Now, Quitch bonus were 3 questions that were released only in class, and they were open for 90 seconds. So within the slide pack, I had another slide that said Quitch bonus, all bright colours and everything. So when that slide came up, then the lecturers would go on and open each of the bonus questions as they came to them, and then they would leave them open for 90 seconds and then close them. So what that meant, only students who came to class had access to the bonus questions, unless, of course, they sat at home at their desk and waited for the Quitch notification. Says, you've got a question, but that's, for the amount of times that might happen, it really benefited the students who came to class more. So they had extra chance to get more points for the competition. And it also gave me, in the reports, I could see who was in class. Just by looking at that. And I could also see who actually answered the question, so who was engaged. So that was taking away the subjectivity of, analysing participation in class. So it was really, they got bonus points for attending class. So that worked quite well. So in week 1, I created a sample week. So it wasn't accessible, but it was a time for students to download the app, figure out how it worked, practice with it, and overcome any glitches that they might have with login details or anything like that. Although it's not from Quitch side, but from inexperience. So it worked really well. The majority of students got in week 1, and they all had a practice and got it working well. And then in week 2 is where we started it proper. And so before that, I also held a meeting with my campus lecturers and went through and showed them everything, how it was set up in Quitch and how they could access. And then showed them how to look at the stats, look at the reports, so that they too could have a look at their own campus results and see how students were going, how they were engaged. So, and how they could burrow down further into a particular student to find out, well, how were they doing? So by having a look at these different stats. So this is just from one campus Quitch class that I had. So you can see there was 96% enrolled. They were 61% through and 66% accuracy. So really the performance of the students, they were doing very well. And admittedly, it was part of assessment 1. So what gets measured gets done. So you can see here that burrowing down further, looking at, for example, at Alex, and then going down further, see how Alex was doing and having a look at the questions, which ones he got right, which ones he got wrong. And then, so having a look at which ones he, were wrong, you can then reach out to the student and say, oh, I saw that you didn't quite understand this. Do you want to talk about it a little bit more? Or, what can I help you with? So it just gave that personal interaction between the lecturer and the student. So that is working really well. So I talked about that I had a master site. Well, then from the master site, after I had it all created, I then copied that to different campus sites. So Brisbane, Melbourne, North Sydney, Strathfield and Blacktown all had their own Quitch sites. So they had their own individual one. I loaded iconic photos from each state, which is available through Quitch, which I really liked that. And students could say, well, that's mine. There's, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and being able to identify with that. And then within each of those classes, I loaded the student roster into that. So that was just ever so easy to do. And so then they were all there. And then an email would go out to the student, and all they had to do was accept the invite. And of course, there were reminders if a student hadn't accepted the invite. So again, automatic from Quitch saved me so much time, because time is precious. Each student had a pseudonym, generally a colour and an animal, I believe. And of course, the campus lecturer was also enrolled as an educator in their particular ones. So I showed them how to open and close the bonus questions. So that really worked really well for them to be able to do that. It also freed up their time to be able to focus on learning rather than having to monitor who was doing what in class. The leaderboard. So there is an overall leaderboard for each of the classes. And what it does, it tells you which of those students are performing the best in their particular class. Students can also see it, but they can only see the pseudonym. So who's winning, the pink octopus or something. So to be able to say, yes, they are the leaderboard. Oh, but I'm just down here. If I do this really well, I can, step up the ladder a bit in the leaderboard competition. And the leaderboard competition is the points from getting questions correct. So that's not part of their assessment. When I evaluate what they've done, I'm looking at how many they did, whereas in the Quitch competition, it's how many they got right. So the more they do, the more chances they have of getting it right. So there's two separate things happening at the same time. There's the Quitch competition, and then there's the assessment. So, and they're linked, but we're looking at different things. So then what I would do is, as I've mentioned this before, it's not based on students' correct answers, but rather that, how many that they do. So talking about the Quitch report. So each week, although I could wait till the end of the semester because it's all there, I downloaded the results reports for each campus as a CSV file. And then what I would do, I would merge them. I'd create a master file and turn it into a table so I could quickly sort as was needed. So, there was the student first, last name, which, if you have a look at that section name, that's telling me which particular week I'm looking at. Then the class name is which campus it is. And then also the question and how much time they spent on the question if they got it right. So the information in the results report is fantastic, and you can use it for a whole range of different things in determining how students are doing. At the leaderboards, again, I could download the leaderboard for each of the classes, but then again, what I did, I merged them so I could have an overall look across all campuses, and also be able to see if there was any significant differences between campuses, which I really haven't found any differences to date, except what I've found in other assessment items where you can see a student is just performing well at that particular student, regardless of which campus. So you can see here on the capture is from a student's view, what they can see, except I'm viewing it here as an educator, but a student can see the same sort of thing on their phone. So where are they actually sitting? So the pink eagle here, well, obviously a leader, and this is looking at Melbourne only. So that's what a student will see. They'll only see the campus that they're on. So what I actually did strategically throughout the semester, I posted a PDF that I created from my Excel table. And then I sorted it by the top 10, so who was coming first, and it was the top 10 that I chose. So they're highlighted in red. And you can see there's quite a few across campuses. So I've got Strathfield, Sydney, Blacktown. We're all there. They're all there. And that's what I would post so students could see where, who were in the top 10 across and nationally so that they could see. So overall, why is it working? So I've written here the title, it's fun, it's valuable, it can be done anywhere. That's really it in a nutshell. So playing Quitch in class is getting students involved, and it's encouraging fun and competitiveness while they're in class. So they're looking at their own campus leaderboard. They don't know who's who, but they're really enjoying it. It's encouraging them to read the textbook about the weekly concepts that we're going through. It's encouraging collaboration. And answering all of the components of the engagement task is worth 20%. So why would they throw that away? So why 20%? Well, students really don't see the value in 10%. It's really not worth the effort. So just, upping the ante a little bit and making it 20%, it is really working. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the final outcomes after using Quitch this semester. So it's also, it stops them falling asleep. So if you're using the Quitch bonus in class, sometimes you get tired. We get that. We remember what it was like to study, and when you're doing 4 subjects or even more, it can get very wearing, particularly around assessment time, because they are, you're staying up late doing assessment, of course, because they start the night before. We all, know how that happens. So next time I'll probably add some, I'll throw in a few curveballs into the bonus quizzes, for example, what colour is a jellyfish? Just something that doesn't really relate, but just to, just to more so encourage that collaboration between students across. So it's not so much relying on their knowledge of accounting, but just to make it a little bit more fun. So students are learning, and that's the most important thing to me. And this is getting them engaged, which I can really see, and I'm enjoying it as well, as are my campus lecturers. So in week 12, we have finished our assessment, capturing the data from assessment. So what I've done in week 12, I've created a Quitch Off. Now, the Quitch Off is the top 10 students nationally going into a Quitch Off competition, and I've created the questions. These are a little bit harder, more like exam type questions going in here to find out the winner. And we have been encouraging students all the way along. In week 12, there's going to be a Quitch Off. So which is next week. So I'm really monitoring, seeing where everybody's at. And hopefully I've got students from every campus in the Quitch Off. Of course, they don't know who it is. But I would like to, at the end, say, if it's a pink turtle, the pink turtle won, and that was, such and such from the Melbourne campus, so that they can get the recognition to say they were the winner. And not only that, they'll get a $50 voucher for being the winner of the Quitch Off. So all throughout, nobody knows who anybody is, but the winner, I will announce who the winner is at the end, so that everybody can know and get that recognition. So I'll end up here with a quote from Malcolm Knowles. So adults don't engage in things they don't see as relevant or valuable, but they will commit time, effort, money, and most importantly, their intellect to the pursuit of goals that they do see as relevant and valuable. If we in our teaching convey the relevance and the value of what we are asking students to engage in, that is to say, if we explain why and the what's in it for you factor, then intrinsic motivation and engagement follow. So we all know that, what's in it for me? And that's what they need to know. What are they going to get out of it? So it's really important that we explain that fact. So thank you very much, Grania. And so does anybody there's one in the chat. I'm assuming that somebody's been having a look at that as we go along.
So Wendy, thank you so very much. That was absolutely fantastic. And I myself have got some ideas on how I will use it with my own students differently in the future. So thank you for that, Wendy. Just fantastic. And congratulations, actually, on what you've managed to do in one semester. It truly is quite an achievement. So Wendy, I'm going to see if some of our attendees have some questions here. So feel free, we've got just a couple of minutes probably to ask any questions. So does anybody have anything for Wendy at this point? Wendy, I had one come in earlier in that private one, and it was in regards to, there was two things actually. Are you going to do any research, or have you done any research or publications in regards to mobile learning, and what are your students saying about Quitch?
Okay, well, the answer to this, absolutely. It's an opportunity to do research. So I will be doing some research. I have actually put up a Quitch experience survey already that will open towards the end of this week, so I can get some feedback from students. Their performance data I can easily access, so I don't need them to tell me about their performance. And of course, I've got all their demographics as well. But I really want to get their, written, in a survey to tell me how they've actually, how they enjoyed it. So there's a number of questions there. So certainly we'll be doing some research with that. So what have students been saying? Oh, look, they love it. They absolutely love it. And they've told me that it's very useful, that they are going to the textbook to get the answers. They've got it on hand before they start answering their questions, so they can quickly flick to have a look. And they like having it in the classroom as well, because as soon as it comes up, it's like they all pull out their phones and they're heads down. And I actually set the timer on my mobile phone, and it goes off after the 90 seconds with a little bell, and it's like, oh no, wait, don't. So no, they are really enjoying it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic, Wendy. Wendy, we're just out of time, so we will have to wrap it up there. But can I say, Wendy, actually on behalf of all of us accounting academics across the globe, really, Australia, New Zealand, and indeed it's used in other places as well, but it would be great to share your findings and your research, and indeed your story. I know some colleagues in the UK had asked if we could record this and share it with them as well, because again, we're all looking to try and engage those first year students. We know it's very difficult for them, especially given what they have been through over the last couple of years. And so often as well, students have said to me, can we make the learning fun? And really, what more can you ask for? And, as they said, if we can have fun while we learn, why not? And I thought, there's absolutely no reason. I think, in fact, it's a great suggestion. So I love what you're doing, Wendy. I love the fact you're using it both in class and outside of class as well, because when I initially looked at it, I was using it for consolidation, reinforcement of that learning outside. But a number of colleagues have started to use it in class as well to make it more interactive and so on. And it seems to be just working fantastically well in that way as well. So Wendy, a huge thank you to you. Thank you for sharing that story with us. And also a thank you for the attendees who have come along today. And we will, of course, share the recording with you as well. So Wendy, thank you so very much. And I look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks so much, Grania. All the best. Talk soon.
Thank you now. Will do. Bye-bye.